opened our marriage, but he took full advantage and left me with nothing. Hello, Reddit. This is my first time posting here, though I've been lurking on this app for ages. I always see how people come here to get advice, whether it's legal stuff or relationships, so I thought, why not? Maybe some of you can give me some perspective, or at least help me sort out this mess I'm in. My name's Lillian, I'm 31, and I've been married to my husband, who's 30, for about 4 years. I'm not going to sit here and sugarcoat it like we're some fairy tale couple. No, ours was never one of those soulmate stories. I'll be honest, I married him for the money. When we first met, I saw a man who was well off, who came from wealth, who had that easy confidence of someone who's always known a life of luxury. He's a trust fund kid through and through. Never had to worry about much. Growing up, I was used to scraping by, watching every dollar and dealing with the stress of never having enough. So when I saw a chance for a life of financial freedom, I took it. I saw my ticket out of a life of struggle and I grabbed it with both hands. But don't get me wrong. Our marriage was good. My husband is, admittedly, a very caring person. He's always been attentive, generous, the kind who goes out of his way to make me happy. In his own way, I believe he genuinely loves me, or at least did. So, just because I say I saw my ticket out of a life of struggle and grabbed it, doesn't mean I didn't care about my husband at all. There was a kind of comfort there, a sense of stability I'd never known before. With him, I got to live a life I hadn't even dreamed was possible growing up. I mean, I'd always pictured scraping by, wondering if I'd make rent or afford something beyond the basics. But here I was. Nice cars, designer bags, vacations that were more than just a drive to the nearest beach. For the first time, I was actually comfortable. So yes, it was good. We may not have had some grand, passionate love story, but it was stable, and we were content. But the thing is, contentment gets old. At first, it felt like I'd been handed this perfectly wrapped package, a dream come true. But the more I unwrapped it, the more I found it was just empty. It didn't take long to realize I wasn't exactly living some romantic fairy tale. I never married Sean because I was head over heels or couldn't live without him. No, my choice was based on practicality and security, and that was enough for a while. But about 4 years in, I was starting to reach my limits. I was bored, plain and simple. But then I hit this wall. 4 years in, and suddenly everything that felt comfortable started to feel unbearably dull. I had the luxury, the stability, the easy life, but I was bored. Really, really bored. It was like being in a room with beautiful wallpaper and plush furniture, but no windows. I started to wonder if this was it, if this was all there was. And here's the thing, I wasn't exactly subtle about how I felt. I'd meet up with my friends and tell them about my frustrations. I'd complain about how every day felt like a rerun, how Sean, despite being a wonderful provider, just wasn't thrilling. He was reliable, dependable. But where was the excitement? Where was the spark? My friends, bless them, had no problem offering their advice. They'd tell me to find myself a fling and spice things up. They made it sound so easy, like it was a no-brainer. They'd talk about how everyone deserved to live a little, how my husband would never know. They made it sound so easy. But it wasn't that simple. Cheating wasn't just some impulsive decision I could brush off. Sean is smart, really smart, and he's not the type to be easily deceived. If he got even the faintest whiff of something suspicious, he'd start digging. And as much as my friends made it sound harmless, I couldn't ignore the very real consequences. You see, there was a prenup, and not just any prenup, one with a strict cheating clause. If I so much as slipped up, I'd be leaving with nothing. Zero. Zip. You might think I'm exaggerating, but I knew exactly what I'd signed up for. Sean's family made sure of it. I had a lifestyle that I'd fought to secure, and one slip-up would mean the end of it all. No more luxury, no more easy life, no more comfort. Everything I'd worked so hard to build, gone in an instant if he found out. And for me, that wasn't just a risk. It was unthinkable. I explained all of this to my friends, of course, about the prenup, the risks, and how cheating just wasn't an option for me. That's when one of them, Sarah, chimed in with an idea that caught me off guard. Open the relationship. She laid out this whole plan, saying that if Sean and I could have an open marriage, it would solve everything. I'd get my excitement and freedom, while keeping the stability and comfort I'd worked so hard for. Sean, in her view, would also get the chance to do whatever he wanted, and everyone would be happy. It was genius, really. As Sarah explained it, she made it sound almost like I'd be doing Sean a favor, like I'd be generous for giving him the chance to explore other people. "It'll be great for him," she said, as if it was all for his benefit. And honestly, I loved it. I thought it was an amazing idea. Here I was, offering Sean a taste of freedom he'd never dared to seek. It was progressive and modern. I could hardly contain my excitement over this solution. In my mind, it wasn't just a way to deal with my own boredom or dissatisfaction. It was a gift I was giving him. I'd always seen myself as an open-minded, generous person, someone not limited by society's boring, old-fashioned rules. This was just me living up to that ideal. So I went for it. Of course, I knew Sean wasn't exactly the type to jump headfirst into something as radical as an open marriage. Sean was, well, let's just say he's the definition of monogamous. He was raised to believe that marriage meant exclusivity, stability, and the whole one-person forever idea. He wasn't the adventurous, thrill-seeking type, and he certainly wasn't the kind to even consider something like this on his own. Knowing Sean as well as I did, I realized it would take some serious groundwork to make him even consider opening our marriage. This wasn't something I could just bring up out of the blue and expect him to jump on board with. I had to ease him into it, almost like planting little seeds that would eventually grow into an idea he might think was his own. So I started slipping comments here and there, talking casually about things I'd read or heard about other couples who had embraced open relationships and seemed happier for it. I painted this image of these happy couples, ones who had found a deeper sense of trust and freedom through non-monogamy, and I made sure to mention how being open could actually make a relationship stronger, not weaker. Little by little, I ramped it up. It was always framed as something for him, a chance for him to break out of his shell, to explore, to have new experiences if he wanted to. I'd go on about how I just wanted him to be happy, how I didn't want him to feel tied down or limited by anything. I thought that if I played the supportive wife angle hard enough, it would sound like I was giving him a gift, a chance to be free. Of course, it was all strategic. Deep down, I knew this wasn't about Sean's happiness, it was about mine. I was looking for my way out of boredom, my way to live a little without losing everything I'd secured. Sean was, predictably, skeptical. He's always been a straightforward, stable kind of guy, and the idea of suddenly opening up our marriage felt like a complete shock to him. At first, he was visibly uncomfortable, almost disturbed by the whole thing. He even sat me down one night, convinced I was already cheating, and that this was just my way of easing my guilt. I played it cool, though. I let him look through my phone, went above and beyond to reassure him that nothing was happening on the side. I laid it all out calmly and finally opened up about how I'd been considering an open relationship for us, not just for myself. Even though he still wasn't interested, I kept pushing. I'd bring up how our relationship had felt a bit stagnant, how I was starting to feel trapped, and I managed to turn it into a pity party for myself. I made him believe this was about me feeling unfulfilled, that my happiness depended on him giving me this chance. Sean's always had a soft spot for me and genuinely wants to see me happy. So, in the end, I knew he'd come around. He trusted me deeply, trusted that I understood what I was talking about and that I genuinely wanted what was best for us. And in a way, I did, as long as what was best for us also happened to be what was best for me. So eventually, he gave in. Whether he saw it as a way to make me happy or maybe was just curious himself, he finally agreed. And the moment we agreed to open up our marriage, I felt this overwhelming sense of relief. Suddenly, I had the freedom I'd been craving, all while still holding on to the comfortable, secure life I'd built with him. To me, it felt like a perfect balance. Here I was, still married, still with the financial security and stability I wanted, but now with the freedom to explore, to live out all the excitement I'd been missing. It was perfect, or at least I thought it was. We set up the basic ground rules, the usual stuff, no hooking up with anyone super close to us, and basically, no one who'd bring complications into our lives. I wanted the freedom to explore, but I wasn't about to have messy relationships blowing up in my face, or messing up the comfort I had with Sean. We kept it all simple, discreet, and safe. Once we had everything set, I jumped in. Honestly, it felt incredible, like I'd finally gotten a taste of freedom. I started seeing a few people casually dating around. Not just one person either, more than one. It gave me this excitement I'd missed in my life. I got the best of both worlds. The comfort and security of being with Sean, and the fun and excitement of being with other people. The best part, Sean wasn't seeing anyone else. Even though he could have, he wasn't taking advantage of our new open setup at all. While I was out having my fun, he was still coming home every night doing his own thing. Sure, we weren't spending as much time together since I was busy, but he was still just there. He wasn't out with other people, and that made me really happy. I mean, technically, I'd agreed we could both date around, but I wasn't exactly thrilled about the idea of him actually doing it. It just felt wrong. The fact that he was still home, not interested in anyone else, felt like a huge relief. Every time I came back and saw him there, just like usual, doing his own thing, watching TV or reading, it made me feel secure. I was out living my life, getting the excitement I craved, and he was just steady, right there, dependable. It was like I'd found the perfect balance, and I felt totally in control. I had everything I wanted, and for a while, life felt pretty amazing. As I got deeper into the whole open relationship lifestyle, Sean and I naturally started spending less time together. With all the time I was dedicating to these other connections, I guess it was only a matter of time before Sean decided to take the opportunity too. One day he sat me down and told me he'd met someone, just like that. He was calm, almost casual about it, like he was telling me he'd joined a new hobby or something. He told me her name, a few little details about her, and even had this smile on his face like he was genuinely excited to share it with me. My stomach twisted as I listened, but I kept it together. I mean, I couldn't exactly argue against it. After all, I was the one who'd pushed for this setup in the first place. But still, hearing him talk about her so openly made me feel off. Then Sean took it a step further. He wanted me to meet her. At first I thought he was kidding, but he was dead serious. He invited her over for coffee one afternoon, and I felt like I had no choice but to go along with it. When she walked in, I tried to put on a friendly face, but inside I was fuming. She was everything I didn't want Sean to go for: young, pretty, and clearly taken with him. The way she looked at him, laughed at his jokes, and leaned in just a bit too close sent me spiraling. It felt like she was stepping into a space that was meant just for me, and I hated it. The thing was, I couldn't exactly get mad. I'd set this whole thing in motion, right? I'd been the one out there dating around, enjoying myself, barely even thinking about Sean's reaction to all of it. But now that the tables had turned, I couldn't shake the jealousy bubbling up. I kept telling myself to let it go, to be cool. But every time he mentioned her, a part of me felt this irrational anger building. At first, I tried to downplay it. I reminded myself that I'd agreed to all of this, and that I'd technically done the same thing, but it didn't sit right. When he started seeing her more frequently, it went from a mild annoyance to full-on irritation. He'd be home less, just like I was, and every time he left, I knew exactly who he was with. It was like this constant reminder that he didn't need me the way he used to, and that bugged me. What made it worse was that I couldn't say anything without sounding like a complete hypocrite. I mean, if I complained about him dating her, how could I justify my own actions? So I bit my tongue and tried to act supportive, telling him I was happy he'd found someone. But deep down, I was anything but happy. Every time he'd bring her up, it was like a slap in the face, this constant reminder that I wasn't the only one in his life anymore. As time went on, Sean started spending more and more time away from home. At first I tried to brush it off, figuring he'd eventually come around or get over this whole seeing someone else phase. But then I noticed he wasn't just physically absent. He was emotionally pulling away too. He was quieter, less present, and honestly, it felt like I didn't even know him anymore. I was furious, to say the least. I couldn't believe he was so distant, especially when it was my idea to try this open relationship in the first place. The way he was acting made it clear he was fully invested in his new relationship, and I could feel the control slipping right out of my hands. One day, I'd had enough and decided it was time to put an end to all of this. I sat him down, wanting to talk things through, and, if I'm being honest, expecting him to just agree with what I had in mind. I told him that this whole open relationship thing was done. I wanted us to go back to the way things were. I figured he'd understand, maybe even be relieved, but instead he hit me with a response that left me stunned. He basically told me I'd made my choice and now I had to live with it. He wasn't willing to just snap back to how things used to be because it wasn't fair for me to treat our relationship like something I could switch on and off based on my moods. Hearing that was like a punch to the gut. I'd assumed I could just decide when to close things off, that it was my call to make. But Sean wasn't having it. He made it clear that he wasn't about to drop his new life just because I suddenly felt differently. His words were blunt, like he was finally standing up for himself and refusing to be strung along by my whims. I couldn't believe how stubborn he was being, but I was also hit with the reality that I'd pushed things too far. I'd opened this door and now he had no intention of closing it just because I wanted to. I was beyond furious. Sean had never stood his ground like this before. He used to go along with what I wanted without putting up much resistance. So I pushed harder, expecting him to finally cave and agree to close the marriage. But he didn't. Instead, he seemed to be completely embracing this new life, taking full advantage of the open relationship I had once thought would be freeing for both of us. I couldn't believe it. This wasn't how things were supposed to go, and I felt trapped watching him enjoy himself while I was left feeling more alone and unhappy than ever. As if that wasn't enough, I noticed it was even starting to affect me financially. Sean wasn't as generous with money anymore. So I turned to my last resort, something my friends assured me would work. They suggested I start bringing up the idea of divorce as a way to pressure him back in line. At first, I dropped hints here and there, hoping he'd get nervous and agree to close the marriage. But when he didn't, I decided to go all in. One evening, I sat him down and told him as seriously as I could that if he didn't agree to close the marriage, I was prepared to walk away for good. I expected him to back down, maybe even beg me to stay, but instead he barely flinched. He looked at me calmly and said he'd been thinking about the same thing and would contact his lawyer. He even pulled out a partially completed form for divorce. It was clear he'd been prepared for this all along. I was stunned. From there, things spiraled faster than I could process. Sean had already thought this through and was way ahead of me. He gave me until the weekend to move out, and before I knew it, I was packing up my things. I ended up having to crash at a friend's place, completely blindsided by how quickly everything had fallen apart. It was like a slap in the face. For the first time, I was facing the reality that the control I'd always assumed I had over our relationship was gone. I've tried everything I can think of to fix things with Sean, but it's like hitting a wall. He's not interested, doesn't even pretend to be. It's almost as if he's been waiting for a way out, and now he's finally got it. I thought opening the marriage would be my ticket to feeling free and fulfilled without giving up the stability we'd built. I never considered that he'd be the one to end up enjoying it more, or that I'd be left feeling like the outsider. For the first time, I'm facing the harsh truth. He's done with me. He's made up his mind, and he's not going to forgive me or let me come back home. And as much as that realization stings, I'm just about ready to cut my losses and move on, if that's what it takes to find some peace. Sean told me he was moving forward with the divorce, but he hit me with a bombshell. He said I wouldn't be getting anything, thanks to the cheating clause in our prenup. I was floored. How could he say I cheated? It was an open marriage. We both agreed to it. I hadn't done anything outside the bounds of what we'd agreed on. I told him all of this, but he didn't want to hear it. He just looked at me calmly, like he had it all figured out. And since then? Radio silence. No response to my texts, no explanation of how he plans to use the prenup against me. I'm left wondering if he really has a chance at pulling this off. Can he somehow twist this whole thing around and leave me with nothing? And as much as I hate to admit it, I miss him. I never thought I'd say it, but this whole mess has shown me just how much I took our relationship for granted. If I'd known that opening the marriage would end with Sean ready to walk away, I would never have pushed it. Now all I can do is wonder if there's even the slightest chance of saving this marriage, or if I'm just grasping at something that's already gone. Update. Hello, Reddit. So, I hope I'm doing this right. I actually posted before, but it got deleted, so here I am trying again. Honestly, this whole experience has been a huge reality check. My post blew up way more than I expected, and reading through the comments and DMs was shocking. People really didn't hold back in telling me exactly what they thought of me. I even thought about deleting the post because it's kind of terrifying to think that someone I know could stumble upon it and put two and two together, but, well, the damage is already done. It's been shared enough that deleting it wouldn't really make a difference at this point. It's been a while since I last updated because, to be honest, I've been busy. And yeah, I'll admit, I went on a bit of a binge to deal with everything, which has been intense. The comments I got weren't easy to read, but they forced me to take a long, hard look at myself. I've been called just about every name in the book, and while it stung, I honestly can't say I didn't deserve it. It made me do some serious self-reflection, and that's something I've probably been needing to do for a long time. One of the biggest reality checks came when I was served with divorce papers. I don't know why, but it actually hit me hard. I cried when I saw them, which surprised me. I always thought I didn't really love my husband, Sean. I thought our relationship was just about the stability and the money. But now, looking back, I realized that somewhere along the line, I'd grown to love him. I was just so wrapped up in myself that I never acknowledged it. That's probably why I got so upset when he started seeing other people. It wasn't just about control or pride, it was jealousy, and I didn't even recognize it at the time. But it's too late to make any of that matter now. He's fully committed to the divorce, and he's made it clear there's no going back. What I didn't realize until now, though, is how deep his reasons went. Sean actually went through my phone at one point while we were still together. He found the group chat I had with my friends, and he read everything. All the planning, the things I said to manipulate him into opening the marriage, even the messages where my friends and I mocked him, calling him a cuckold and worse. That's what made him snap, and he told me he'd never be able to forgive that. Hearing that was like a punch to the gut. I tried to apologize, but let's be real, that doesn't undo the damage I caused. He told me he's not going to get over it, not anytime soon, and I don't blame him. On top of that, I had a free consultation with a lawyer, hoping maybe there'd be a way for me to salvage something. But the lawyer explained that legally, I'm in a bad position. There's nothing to show that Sean formally agreed to open the marriage. He has screenshots of my messages, though, and the way they paint me isn't great. My lawyer told me it could be considered evidence of cheating, and with the prenup's infidelity clause, it really doesn't look good for me. I'm honestly at a loss. I don't even know if it's worth fighting this in court, or if I should just accept it and move on. I never wanted a divorce, but dragging this out in court feels like it would only make things worse. As if that wasn't enough, I'm now staying with my parents because things with my friends have gone downhill. I don't know what happened, but they've started treating me differently. There's this undercurrent of sarcasm and mockery now, like they're amused by the mess I'm in. They keep making snide remarks about how I'm not on my pedestal anymore. I really didn't want any extra drama, so I packed up and moved out. It's humiliating, but maybe this is what I need. A fresh start, even if it's not on my terms. So yeah, there's your update. Not sure where I go from here, but I'm just trying to take it one day at a time. Update. Hello, Reddit. It's me again. It's been a while, I know. Sorry for the radio silence, but life has been, well, a mess, to put it lightly. I kept getting messages asking for an update, so here I am. I figured I might as well give everyone a final look at how things have turned out. So, first things first, the divorce is officially over. No drama, no dragged-out legal battles. I didn't lawyer up or fight for anything. I just let it go as smoothly as possible. And yeah, that means I didn't walk away with anything. But honestly, my conscience feels a little lighter for it. At least I can say I didn't make things harder for Sean or anyone else. I've still got my job, which keeps the lights on and covers the basics, so I'm not homeless or stranded. It's just barely enough to scrape by. I'm back to square one, just trying to keep my head above water.
And
Can you tell I'm trying my hardest to sound like I'm handling this well? Because, spoiler alert, I'm not. I'm miserable. There's really no other word for it. Going back to living the way I did before I met Sean, barely getting by, feels like hitting rock bottom. I got used to a different life, one that feels completely out of reach now. And I hate it. I hate every single moment of this. I'd give anything to turn back time. But that's just wishful thinking at this point. I've lost all my friends too. Somewhere along the line, I started to realize they weren't the kind of friends I needed. They were great when everything was going well. But as soon as things got tough, they either bailed or turned into people I barely recognized. They were more interested in the drama than actually being there for me. Cutting them off felt necessary, but it's left me feeling even more alone. So here I am, lonely, broke, and completely isolated. I have no one to talk to, no support system, and nowhere to turn. I never imagined it would come to this. I try to convince myself that I can get through this, but it's hard to stay positive. I spend way too much time scrolling through Sean's social media, watching him live his life like none of this affected him. He seems genuinely happy, moving on with his life. It's gut-wrenching to see, but I can't seem to stop myself. So yeah, that's it. That's the update. I know it's not what anyone wanted to hear. No dramatic fights, no drawn-out court battles. Just life moving on, I guess. I wish I had something better to say, something more hopeful. But this is where things stand.